The James Gunn Superman movie kicked off a brand new DC universe, and here we are starting from scratch. There's been a lot of different opinions about this film from the fans. Some people have really enjoyed this new version of Superman, others, not so much. Now, if you go to Rotten Tomatoes and look at the overall score, the audience has it at a 90%. The critics, if you go to top critics, they have it at 72%. But overall, it seems like the fans really like this film. Now, before I get into my review and give you my opinions, I went and watched Man of Steel before I even saw this Superman movie. I haven't seen Man of Steel in a long time. And when I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, why did I dislike this movie so much when it came out in 2013? Because when I was watching it recently, I actually enjoyed the movie. I believe part of it was I was more naive back then. Another part of me was thinking, because of all the great projects that Marvel came out with, in the lighter tone, the comedy that Marvel was pumping out, and they already were building up towards that Thanos ending, even though it was in 2013, DC was getting off the ground and they were competing with Marvel, and they had a darker tone. It was more serious, not as much comedy. And in my opinion, I think the fans didn't receive that very well. So when I watch it now, I actually like it more. And that's just how I view it. Now, let's talk about James Gunn, because I've seen opinions out there saying that we need to bring back Zack Snyder. I don't think we need to do that whatsoever, in my opinion. Now, I'm not saying Zack Snyder's a bad director, but a lot of the DC movies he put out wasn't very good. Like the Batman vs. Superman, that was just not a great film. The first Justice League movie before he released the Snyder Cut wasn't great. And then you look at the totality of his movies and the direction he was going in, it didn't feel like there was anything happening with DC. They were rushing things. Instead of trying to make a sequel to Man of Steel, learning from the things that worked and what didn't work, they rushed right into a Batman vs. Superman movie. And I thought that was a big mistake, in my opinion, because you could have made your own standalone Batman movie, even if it was Ben Affleck being casted as Batman. You have your Superman sequel. You still have your standalone projects with your Aquaman, your Wonder Woman. You make solo movies for The Flash, for Green Lantern, because he wasn't in this universe. And then you have your Cyborg, and you build off these characters and head towards a Justice League movie. Instead, everything was rushed. And the Batman vs. Superman movie really killed the momentum, in my opinion. Because again, I like the Man of Steel, but again, they just rushed everything, it felt like. I did enjoy the Aquaman film. I loved Wonder Woman, and I liked the Snyder's Cut. But it felt like everything was just being pushed to the front because what Marvel was doing was making great films. It was a lighter tone, and they were heading towards Thanos. There was direction there. Even though every movie didn't hit, like for example, Iron Man 2 wasn't that good. The first two Thor movies was okay to me. So they had their misses, but Marvel had direction, and they spent time developing these characters. That's the important part. With DC, it felt like they were just trying to compete with Marvel and get movies out instead of just taking their time developing their universe and making good movies. Let's talk about the Superman movie itself that just came out. I'm going to give you my dislikes first and my likes second. I want to end on a positive note. Now, again, this is a spoiler review. If you have not seen the movie yet, click off this video and come back another time. That's perfectly fine. So let's get into the dislikes. The first thing I did not like about this movie was the pacing. It felt like I was jumping into season 6 of episode 8 of Superman, where a lot of episodes have gone by. And if you haven't kept up, you're just going to get in the middle of this and just watch it from here. I would have liked maybe a 5-minute origin story where you can just tell a little bit of a narrative about Superman, how it became Superman. I know they spent a small portion, they had the little narrative there, but it would have been nice if they had some scenes, maybe he's a baby, then you show him as a kid, and then he becomes Superman. That's fine. That would have been really cool to see, but they decided not to do that. So I'm not against skipping past the origin story, but I would have felt more connected, in my opinion. It felt like the pacing, again, was going from scene to scene, and there were some moments in this movie. It was really good. I enjoyed it. Like, for example, Clark and Lois's chemistry. They had good scenes, but I felt like they rushed some stuff, especially the part where he was going to turn himself in. And maybe I'm nitpicking here, but I would have loved to see Superman fly off, and then the next moment, you show him turning himself in. Instead, we went from the scene of Superman and Lois talking to him on the ground being arrested. It was like, okay, I understand you're trying to get to the point, but maybe slow it down and let these things develop. Because in my opinion, it just felt like The story was being rushed, it wasn't fully developed. The characters we got had potential, but there wasn't any emotional depth, in my opinion. It had some, but not a lot. So for the Lex Luthor scene where he shot the civilian that he was interrogating, I would have liked to see him maybe ask 3 or 4 more questions, because he said as soon as he shot him, man, that was quick. And I was like, yeah, it was. It felt rushed. It was a dark moment. And I like the fact they tried to showcase Lex Luthor as this dark character. That was cool. But maybe ask a few more questions, get Superman's agony built up, his sadness. And he's like, man, I'm helpless here. That would have been cool if you just asked a few more questions, and it would have brought more suspense to that scene, in my opinion. The next thing I didn't like about this film was Krypto the dog. Look, it was a cute dog. It was cool to have something different in this movie, but it was a little annoying to me, in my opinion, because I would like to see a dog who was well trained, a dog who was looking to help. I mean, Krypto did help, but it felt like the dog was trying to be funny, and it really wasn't funny. Like the scene where Superman the baby was being dragged into this portal, and Krypto licked the baby while Superman's struggling here. And I'm like, just have the dog be more useful. That's the word I think about. Again, I like the idea of having a dog with Superman. I just think that could have been better. The other thing I didn't like is Clark's hillbilly parents. I didn't enjoy that. I thought you could have got, a selection of parents who were more hip to what's going on, not some people from Kansas who are, out of touch with technology. I mean, they were sweet, but it didn't hit the same as the previous versions of Clark Kent's earthly parents. The next thing I didn't like about this movie was Clark Kent's Kryptonian parents' message to him on Earth. They said to him after Lex Luthor revealed it to the world that he needs to spread his seed to as many women as possible, rule without mercy, and make sure you help these confused people. I didn't like that, because if you go watch the Man of Steel movie, the father told Henry Cavill that you can give the people a message of hope, you can save them all, and you can lead Earth. I love that message. That is better than telling your son, do as you please, because you have all this power and that you should rule without any type of mercy. That's not the Superman I know. If you're going to portray him as this good guy, have morality, don't have his parents have a different message. I don't like that at all. I didn't think it fit very well in this movie. And if you want to say, well, they can fix it, okay, great, but why start off this way with an origin story? The next thing I didn't like about this movie was Superman getting beat up for the majority of this film. Now, I'm not against the opening scene of Bravia and him struggling, because it did say that Superman lost his first fight. I'm not against that whatsoever, because you're trying to showcase his human side. But to me, in my opinion, it leaned too much into his vulnerability. And then you look at the fight scene against the giant Kaiju. He was telling the Justice Gang, let's try to protect him because we could send him to a different planet. I know he's trying to be the good guy here, but this giant Kaiju is trying to destroy buildings. And at this rate, you just got to do what you got to do. So I was like, look, I understand you want to be the good guy, but this thing is just destroying stuff. You had to save a girl, you saved a squirrel, which I thought was cool, and a dog. So you have to ask yourself, maybe we should just take this thing down. Sometimes you got to be Superman and handle your business. I'm not suggesting that Superman has to kill Kaiju, but you got to handle your business as Superman. And then we move on to the Metamorpho scene. Now, I'm not against this part because you're using kryptonite to weaken him, so I'm fine with that. You're showing his human side, cool. After he breaks out of jail, he goes and fights the Engineer. After he heals and Ultraman. At this point, I'm thinking, okay, Superman needs to be super, because you're showing this whole film of him being a human being, going through struggles. But even in that fight scene, it felt like Superman was getting beat up the majority of the time. You go watch the fight scenes with Henry Cavill and General Zod and his enemies. He did struggle, but he kept fighting back and overcoming those struggles. I didn't see that enough from this Superman. Look, I'm not against Superman struggling. But in my opinion, I feel like you leaned too much into that idea. It's a great idea, but there was too much of it, in my opinion. And then the last thing I didn't like was the music. It was not memorable. You go watch the Man of Steel and the music they had. It was just night and day better than Superman's music. Now I want to talk about what I enjoyed about this movie. I love the casting. David Corey Sweat as Superman, as Clark Kent, is a great choice. Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane. Great choice. Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor was awesome. These were great choices by Warner Brothers and James Gunn. The other thing I enjoyed was that one fight scene where he looked like Superman. where after he was in the ground, he was trying to to stop the portal. Lex Luthor sent a bunch of men after him, and he flew up in the air, took them all out. That was super dope, and I enjoyed like the scene where they showed the S. Really cool. He's in the air. I'm like, this is Superman at its best, and I enjoyed that. And then the other scene I liked was he went to Lex Corporation to stop that portal from destroying Earth, and he gave his speech about how he's human, he's gonna make mistakes, and I just have to keep getting back up day in and day out. Love it. That was perfect. So there are some things I did like about the movie. Now, the final score for this film for me was a 6 out of 10. I want it to be better. I will say this though, because I don't want to bash James Gunn, because there's some ideas in this movie that will work. He's just got to tone down the comedy, in my opinion. I'm okay with the lighter tone, but you gotta let scenes play out and not throw in a joke. The other thing is, the vulnerable Superman is fine, but make Superman super. Don't lean too much in the side where he's just getting pummeled the entire movie. I know you want to see him struggle. I know you want to show him being kind. But to me, we need Superman also saying to himself, look, I got to go handle my business. When Superman was trying to convince Lex Luthor while he's fighting the Engineer and Ultraman to think about what he's doing, maybe consider stopping this whole fight. I'm like, dude, he's trying to kill you. Why try to even negotiate at that stage of the movie? And then another scene where Lois Lane was asking Clark, why aren't you out there helping the Justice game with that villain? He goes, well, I'm trying to find my dog. I know you're trying to appeal to the human side of Superman. I'm not against that, but in my opinion, I feel like you lean too much into that idea. The ideas that James Gunn brought to this version of Superman was fine. It just wasn't well executed, in my personal opinion. If you can clean that up for the second film, I think Superman would be in great shape, because I love the casting. Looking at the DC universe, let's give James Gunn a chance here to see how this all plays out, because you're not going to hit everything perfectly in every movie. So for example, like the Tom Holland trilogy of Spider-Man, one of the biggest complaints that people didn't like about that Spider-Man was he was getting help from the Avengers, and it wasn't a street level Peter Parker film. The reason why No Way Home did so well and was better in the first two films was because they leaned into that at the end of the movie. Now the expectation is for Spider-Man 4 is Tom Holland to now be Spider-Man in New York City. So I'm not going to just throw in the towel with James Gunn. I want to see how he builds out this DC universe and make some other films. And if they're still flops and not good, then we can have that conversation. Hope you guys enjoyed this video today. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the Superman movie. Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Are you excited for the James Gunn universe in DC? Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.